This is a not-so-brief video demonstration on how to make a turret, and the reason it is not so brief this time is because we are actually going to go through this step by step. I'm going to show you how to make a turret, shoot a projectile at a player, and we're going to go through the script together. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we are going to need is a blank script brain. Then we are going to need our 4 base objects we are going to use. Now what these objects are our turret, then we have our projectile that we are going to shoot, our damage that is going to be dealt once it reaches its location, and then we have our zone in which we are detecting the player so that we start the entire process. Excuse me. So, first thing we need to do is highlight, well, the first thing we need to do is spawn them, but the second thing we need to do is highlight them. Then we're going to go ahead and pull up our script brain, then we are going to add object references, and now we have all our necessary objects here. Alright. Now, the next thing we need to do is we have to actually make sure that these things are not apparent on the map once we start it, so that way we can spawn them in later. So, we go over to onGameStart, and we are going to add node, and then we are going to go to objects and delete object. Now, with what I am about to do, there is a more efficient way to do this. This is kind of the, I'll call it the lazy way. But it would be better to have a object list and just delete the list upon round start instead of making a whole bunch of deletes like this. But we're not going for efficiency right this moment, we're just going for functionality because I want to see you guys how this works. So first things, when the game starts, delete these objects. Which objects? We're going to delete our damage. Nope. We're going to delete our damage, our bullet. And the no-no zone we're actually not going to delete, but I'm going to leave that delete there just in case if we need it. So it's going to move this back up yonder, and that is good to go. So we're going to take this, plop it over to the side, and ignore it for the rest of the video. Unless, of course, we need it again, then we won't ignore it. So once a character or a player or our target enters this area, we need to start shooting at them. So how do we start doing that? Well, first we need to not keep doing that, and add a node. And the node we are going to be adding is, well, what do we want to do? When an object enters an area, we want to make that happen. So on object entered area. So now we need an area monitor to connect this to that. So we're going to go over to variables basic, area monitor, doop 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 doop. Easy peasy, we're programmers. Now we need a on object entered area. What are we going to do? Well, we're actually going to set a variable. So now we're going to go to variables advanced. And before you set in a variable, you need to declare a variable. The variable we're going to work with today is an object variable because the object that we're dealing with is the target or the player or whoever steps into this area monitor. Pardon me. I am the epitome of grace. So what are we going to call this? Well, we're just going to call it target. Goodness gracious, I'm recording and I'm so freaking gassy, I feel like a slob. Alright, we have declared our object variable, and our object variable is our target. One thing we will need to do with this, though, is that we need an initial object or target because of the way that we're going to do this. So, to make it simple, we are simply going to have the no-no zone be our initial object. So that is our initial variable, and that is what the turret is going to be pointing at the beginning of this. Now we need to set our variable. So let's scroll on down, set object variable. So when an object enters the variable, let's set the object. Which object? The one that stepped into the area, of course. And scope, let's make sure that is local because we only want to affect this script brain, and then the identifier is going to be target. Now, for testing purposes, just because I want to show anybody who might be really new doing this, it's very important to test scripts as you go. So very simple, we're going to print player to kill feed. So on the condition that a player steps in this area, we're going to print player to kill feed. Which player? The one that stepped into the area, of course. So let's go ahead and start it up and just run on over here. Now, when I step into this, we should see my name at the bottom left. Look at that, it is functioning. So we are now a variable once we step into that area, and the turret is officially got the necessary startup to start looking at us. All right. But there is one thing that comes with doing it this way. So we're going to add a condition, because what if somebody throws a grenade or a fusion coil in there? We might not necessarily want the turret to shoot at those things. So we're going to add a condition. And to do that, we're going to go over to logic, and we're going to branch. And then on the condition that the object is a player, get is player, we are going to set it as a variable. Alright, nice and simple. And which object is it again? The value is going to be this. So now, very simple. When an object enters an area, on the condition that that object is a player, we are going to set the object variable to the object that set foot into the area. Alrighty, and just to be extra double sure, I'm not going to do this every time, I promise, but we may as well keep making sure that it works. Bada boom, bada bing, it works. Alright, so we have our variable, the player. We now have our target. So how do we start shooting at the player? Well, we are going to do a every n seconds, and that is going to be under events custom. Because every n seconds, on the condition that a player is in that area, we want to shoot them. And we are going to set this bad boy to... let's make it every half a second we shoot at the player. And how are we going to shoot the player? Well, we need a projectile. So we're going to take our projectile over here, our bullet, bring her on up here. And the first thing we need to do is spawn that sucker. So we're going to go to objects, and we're going to scroll down to the S's and spawn object. So every n seconds, spawn an object. But we need to make sure that we have our variable to do that, because we only want to spawn the object if our target is there. So we're going to now get object variable. Make sure we set this. This is our target, and we have a local scope, and we are good to go. So when an object steps into the area, spawn this object. But we do need to set our condition again. So logic branch, players get is player. Move that over yonder, make this nice and pretty. So every n seconds, on the condition that this object is a variable, that object is always a variable. On the condition that this object is a player, spawn this object. Alright, so now once we step into that area, our bullet is going to spawn. Nice and simple. So what is the next step? Well, we need the object to go to the player. So what are we going to do? We need a translate object to point. So objects transform, translate object to point. After we spawn the object, we are going to move it to the player. Which object? It is going to be our bullet. You don't have to duplicate these. You can keep using the same string, but I do this just to make sure it stays nice and pretty. Translate this object. Actually, in this case, I might not need to do that. So go ahead, and this object, we're going to move that object. And where are we going to move that object? Well, we're going to move it to this variable's location. So let's go ahead and pull our variable down here. And we need to get its position, which it was right there. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Get object position. Get this object's position, then translate that bullet to this object. Let's say, for testing purposes, we're going to set that to... it's going to take 2 seconds to do it. And the movement curve, we'll keep it linear. It'll move nice and straight, nice and efficient. Let's go ahead and have a gander. I just remembered that I have a teleport on this map. Alright, let's step in here and let's see if the bullet spawns and comes towards me. Look at that. We have our bullet. It is now trying to hurt us. It's such a good boy. I love you. Alright, let's go back into it. So you may have noticed one issue. The bullet is not spawning on the turret, and that's simply because we have not yet set its position after we spawn it. Because unless you set the object right where you want it to be upon spawning, then it's just going to spawn where it existed in Forge, wherever you initially created the object. So after we translate object to point, or actually before we translate object to point, we are going to set object position. We're going to go ahead and clear this, pull it to the side, set object position. Which object? Our bullet. And what is the position that we are going to set this object to? Well, the position that we're going to set this object to is actually our turret itself. So let's go ahead back over here, grab our turret. Same deal, get object position. Object, get its position. So now, once the bullet spawns, it is going to spawn on the turret, then translate to our position. Excellent, it is spawning on the turret, but you might notice that it's spawning a little low on the turret, and that is because where you grab the object is not up here, it is down here. When you go in Forge, wherever you see these lines, or aka your axes, that is where the object's official position is on the map. These are the coordinates that everything we do will be looking at for any object ever. So when you are doing this, it's probably nice to find nice and centered objects. They're easier to work with. If they have like weird angles or whatnot, they can be kind of difficult. Like this ring, you might want this ring to point at somebody, but that's down here, so that might be kind of weird. But let's go back over here. So what we need to do is, this guy is spawning down here. We need it to be up here. Well, there's a very easy way to do that. We're just going to do a little tiny bit of vector math. So we're going to add vectors, and we need to add it to this position. And to do that, go over here. So we need it to go up. Our z-axis is what handles our up and down. So we're going to take this position, and we need to add, let's say, 10 to the z-axis to make it go up. Variables basic, vector 3. Leave these two blank. We want it to go up, so let's add 10. Take this object, get its position, add 10 to the z-axis, and then set this object's position to that result. So grab our result, drag it all the way up there. Now let's go see how that looks. Looking good. We are now spawning at the tip of the turret. Obviously, this can change for many different things. This all just 100% depends on your prop. I am just showing you the process of which to make this happen. Let's get back into it. So now we have an object that is coming towards us, and we need to make our damage happen. And our damage is down here. So let's grab this guy, bring it over here. So after we translate object to point, there is a couple things that we need to do, and it is basically just this repeating. So we're going to spawn an object, and then we're going to set that object's position, spawn the object, set its position. Which object? Well, this one is going to be our damage. What position? Well, it's going to spawn on the position of our bullet. We can't spawn it on the position of the player, because if we do that, we have a bullet that is going to go to the player, but if the bullet misses and the damage spawns on the player, it's going to be not fair. That's just cheating. You can't do that. So we're going to take our bullet, copy this good bit over here, get the bullet's position, and slap that bad boy right there. So now we have a bullet that is going to go to a player, and then a damage reference that is going to spawn on the bullet. But after we do that, we need to make sure we delete the bullet. Because if we don't delete the bullet, then it's just going to stay there and hover in the air until the next bullet spawns. Or rather, until the bullet itself is changed back to its starting position. So let's go back over to objects. We need to make sure to delete object once this is all done. Which object are we deleting? We are deleting the bullet. Right. And then after we delete the bullet, we are also going to need to delete our damage, because we don't want the spark sitting there floating in the air forever. So let's grab our damage, bring it over here, duplicate, and delete our damage. But wait, we might not want to do that instantly. We want these sparks to show up for a little bit, because the sparks do have an animation that they play. You know, they spawn, a couple sparks fly, and then the sparks just keep kind of flying. So we want to give those sparks a chance to breathe. So let's go to variables basic, and we're going to go to logic, and we're going to wait for n seconds. And the amount of seconds we are going to wait is let's say 0.3. Those sparks really don't need a lot of time to make themselves present. So let's say for 0.3 seconds they will spawn, and then after that 0.3 seconds they will delete themselves. Alright, so now we are on the road to making our little choo-choo train that you may have seen in my previous video with that big old turret over there. So let's go ahead and see how this currently works. We are missing a property on a set object node. I didn't say which object's position we are setting. So where are we right now? We get the player's variable, then we blah blah blah, get the bullet, set its position. We need to move the damage to that position. And that should be all good. So let's go over there, make sure that the bullet comes to us, deletes itself, then spawns sparks. Or rather on the bullet's position. Nice! Cool! Alright, I'm liking that a lot. We got a bullet that moves to an area, and then we get little sparks that fly. Real quick, while it's on my mind, I should note that I chose this specific effect so that we do not have to worry about angling the bullet at all. If you chose like a longer effect, we're going to have to do some math in order to point the object at the player. But I will cover something like that in a different video. For now, we'll focus on this. So our turret is essentially fully functional, save for a few... My goodness, my brain. Somebody help me. Except for a few key features. There we go. That is the word I needed. And that is, it's not damaging us right now. So let's grab our damage and let's set up our damage. What are we going to do for that? Well, we have to have our conditions, which is, or rather just the event in general to do damage. So on object entered area. Now bear with me, this one is going to be a really difficult script and it's going to take us a really long time. So once a object has entered this area, we are going to damage the object. Which object? The object that stepped into the area. Now, for this one, we actually do not need a getIsPlayer because the only circumstances in which our damage is going to spawn at all is if we have already identified a player to shoot at. So that's really not necessary. What kind of damage do we want? Let's say this is a bullet. And heck, we might even have like a rapid fire bullet in a sense. So let's go ahead and say the damage is, I don't know, 30. Small little bullet that does 30 damage. Seems reasonable for a Spartan. So let's go see how the damage feels. Give me that damage. I want to feel it. Yeah, look at that. We're receiving 30 damage. Isn't it magical? Let's go back in here. So now we have a bullet that is coming towards us. It is deleting itself, and then it is spawning damage. It's dealing a good old amount of damage to us. Let's go ahead and dip into the realm of polish for our turret. So, somebody watching this, you may be thinking, I don't want the bullet traveling, for 2 seconds. Because if we show as a quick demonstration here, no matter what, that bullet is going to close that gap in 2 seconds. So if I step in there and teleport all the way over here, that's still getting to us in 2 seconds. And so that projectile is going to go faster and faster the further away we are. And that's not how bullets work. Bullets move at a speed. And whatever speed that is the speed they stay. It doesn't matter where I am. So let's fix that. What we're going to do here to fix that is a little bit of math. Let's go into our math. And we are going to need a divide. We are going to need a subtract vectors. And then we are going to need our positions. So let's just go ahead and grab, actually no, that needs to stay there, but we will go ahead and duplicate this. And then the position we are going to grab is the turret. Alright, so when you are pointing one object at another and it involves a subtract vector, the object you want to point at is always the vector on the top. So we want to point it at the player. So plug that into operand A, take this guy, plug it into operand B, And we have these vectors. There's actually one more step we need right here, and that is that we need to normalize our vector. And what this is doing is this is basically taking our result and setting it to, I believe 1 is what a normalized vector sets it to, so that we are simply dealing with one number. And what we are going to do is plug that normalized vector into this divide. Nope, because we need to do exactly one more thing. It's slipping my mind at the moment. So subtract the vectors, normalize. We need to scale the vector is what we need to do. Is that true? Wait, no. My mind is slipping! Normalize vector, let's scale it and get the result. No, because we have to divide. I'm totally blanking out. I need to use... I need to look at my other turret for reference real quick. I know this, I swear. What did I do over here? Please don't look at this, this is cheating. Oh, I'm stupid. We need the get vector length, of course. Do we even need to normalize, or am I just dumb? Yeah, I'm just dumb. We don't need to normalize at all. Sorry. I'm sorry. No! Stop doing that! Get vector length. Okay, so I don't know why I was going to the normalized vector there. I just remembered there was another vector here, and I'd forgotten what it was. What we are doing right here is when we subtract these vectors, because these are both coordinates of x, y, z. When we subtract them, we get another coordinates of x, y, z. But we don't need all those numbers to deal with. All we need is the distance between them, and that is what this is going to do. So we are going to get that. Get out of here. We're going to take the length between those two objects, and then this right here is actually going to be the speed of our bullet. So, from what I've debugged in the past, a Razorback moves at about 100 meters a second, and I don't know if that's the actual point of measurement in the game. I'm just saying meters. It could be, it's any kind of unit. It moves at 100 speed, let's call it that. So I think for a bullet, let's go ahead and make it double the speed of a Razorback. And to do that, let's just double it. 200 meters a second. And what we're going to do is take the whole number result of that and plug that bad boy into duration. Drag this over here. Now, let's go have a look-see and see how the speed on that bullet is. Go over here. Awesome. So, moving quite fast. I will say there is exactly one glitch when you are doing this with speed. I've noticed that the faster the bullet moves, there is a minimum range where it will stop functioning. And I'm sorry to say that I just don't know how to fix that yet. You can see right there when I step inside that certain radius, we don't get our projectile anymore. It just starts doing damage to us. And I'm not going to lie, I don't know why that is. I don't know how to fix that. The only thing I know that you could do to fix that is simply make the bullet move slower. I do apologize, I don't have any solutions for that. But we have our functional turret. So let's go ahead and move this over here. Not down there, you silly. Move it further away, or rather, instead of moving it so far away, let's just go ahead and slow this bad boy down to, let's just make it 100. We do have one more thing that we need to do, because we only want to fire at the player when they're in this area. They've entered the no-no zone and they must be punished. That's all we want. Right now, as the turret is set up, you become a variable and it's going to keep firing at you no matter what. Well, we have our solution for that already. Grab all this, duplicate it, and we are going to change this right here. Object entered area, nope, on object entered, or object exited area. Take that, slap it in there, put that in there. Which object? Well, the player, of course, because things can still exit the area. They don't have to be a variable to exit the area. And we need to set object variable. Well, we're not going to set it to the player this time. We're going to set it back to its default value, which is the no-no zone. Grab the no-no zone, place it right in the value, and we should be good to go. Our turret should be 100% done now. Step right in here. Nice. And we are getting shot at. We're doing it. And when we step out, we're not getting shot at. We've done it. We've made a functional turret step by step. and it's perfect. There are no mistakes with it at all, and there's nothing janky about it. So, to recap, spawn your objects, delete them on spawn because you don't want those things running around when you have a custom game going. Then grab your area monitor, which is our no-no zone. When an object enters an area, on the condition that that object is a player, set its variable to our declare variable, which is just the target all the way around. And then once we have our variable, we're going to go down here and make all the magic happen. You're going to take your object variable, and on the condition that your object variable is a player, we are going to start this function right here, which is to shoot at the player every half second. And then what we are going to do every half second to make that happen is spawn our bullet, set the bullet's position to the player, or to the turret. Then we are going to translate our bullet's position to the player. Then after we translate the player, or to the player, we're going to spawn the sparks. Then we're going to set the sparks at the bullet's position. Then we're going to delete the bullet. Then we're going to wait for 0.3 seconds to give the sparks some room to breathe. Then we're going to delete the bullets. And to do damage, we come down here. On object entered area monitor, simply do damage to the object. And we are good to go. That is our turret. Nice and simple. At the end of it, it looks nice and pretty. If you have friends that aren't familiar with Forge, you can show this to them and show them how amazing you are. Look at this. It's beautiful. We have our choo-choo train that hurts players. Because at the end of the day, that's what video games are all about. Hurting people. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions or other tutorials that you want done, just let me know in the comments. I'm sure the one that I'm going to get a lot of is how to point a object at a player. And this is the script right here that goes into it. If you would like me to go into detail about this script, we can. It's just a little bit of math. And over here, this is the part that changes. So some object, this is right here, this is handling the object's orientation in reference to the player. So the cone that I used here, it was pointing at the player like from the side, I believe. So if we click on it, yeah, it was pointing at the player on this axis. So what we needed to do is we simply needed to change it 90 degrees one way and then change it 90 degrees to face the player. So add 90, minus 90. It was very simple. But if we look at our big old turret over here, this guy did not actually need that. We simply removed the adds and it functioned just fine because the way that is pointing already has the X, the red going that way, and the X is usually where I try and point, but I guess it also depends on where the tip of the object that you're trying to move is. But that is all for this video. Again, if you have any other questions, just let me know and I'll see what I can do. If you guys need more simple tutorials, I'm more than happy to make them. I know I'm not the biggest YouTuber out there, but I would like to think that I'm small enough that I can give you guys a more personalized approach and actually see what it is you want me to make, or even just message you and let you know how to do it, or if you have any simple questions, etc., etc. We're going to go ahead and conclude it. You have a good one and enjoy the script.